What if your entire life, what you wear, how you travel, how you work, how you speak, how you court, and how you grieve was governed by rules that were never written down? No printed handbook, no public constitution, no visible law code. And yet everyone in your community knows them. They know them the way you know gravity, not because someone explained it, but because you have lived inside it every day since birth. For the Amish, this invisible framework is called the Ordnung. It is not a book. It is not voted on publicly in any way an outsider would recognize. It is rarely explained to anyone who was not raised within it. And yet it governs nearly everything. What color a woman may wear, whether a man may trim his beard, whether a telephone may sit inside a house or must be placed in a shed at the end of the lane, whether a tractor may have rubber tires or must roll on steel, whether a buggy may carry decorative trim or must remain plain. There are over 400,000 Amish living across 32 American states and 3 Canadian provinces, organized into more than 3,100 church districts. And each of those districts maintains its own Ordnung. There is no central authority, no Amish Vatican issuing directives. What is acceptable in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, may be forbidden in Holmes County, Ohio. What one district permits on Monday, a neighboring district may have debated and rejected the previous spring. The Ordnung is local, living, and almost entirely oral. This is Alternate Journals, where we document communities that live by systems of belief, tradition, and order outside the modern mainstream. If you are watching this for the first time, subscribe now and turn on notifications. We release new episodes regularly, and the community growing here is for people who want to understand how other societies have organized life around fundamentally different principles. You do not want to miss what comes next. Tonight, we are documenting the Ordnung, not as rumor or stereotype, but as the living structure that sustains one of the most disciplined communities in the modern world. What the Ordnung is. The word Ordnung comes from German. It means order, discipline, arrangement. But for the Amish, it means something far deeper than organization. It refers to the agreed-upon set of rules and expectations that guide daily life within a particular church district, the GMA, or community, typically consisting of 20 to 40 households. The Ordnung determines whether electricity may be used, whether telephones are allowed, and if so, where they must be placed, what colors clothing may be, what fasteners are permitted, hooks and eyes in some groups, buttons in others, whether tractors may be used in the field, whether buggies may carry lights beyond what the law requires, how courtship should occur, how funerals should be conducted, how facial hair is worn, even what kinds of furniture are acceptable inside a home. And yet these rules are not written in any document that an outsider could obtain. The authors of the Amish Way describe the Ordnung as typically taking the form of oral tradition, communicated through lived example. Amish people know the Ordnung intimately. It is not ambiguous to them, but most would be hard-pressed to recite all of its requirements in a single sitting. Because the Ordnung deals with the details of daily life, it is caught more than it is taught. It is absorbed in the course of everyday life. Mothers and fathers play a much larger role in transmitting it than bishops and ministers do. There are exceptions. A few communities have committed their Ordnung to paper. In Daviess County, Indiana, a written Ordnung includes detailed specifications for how buggies should be constructed. A small settlement in Stevensville, Montana, founded in 2015 and still comprising fewer than a dozen households, maintains a document called the Expression of Faith and Guidelines for the Stevensville, Montana Church. It specifies, among other things, that no cowboy-style or 10-gallon hats may be worn, that bright colors such as orange, pink, red, and yellow are prohibited, that word processors without internet connections are allowed, that basic cell phones may be used if necessary for work. These written versions are the exceptions. In most districts, the Ordnung lives in memory, in habit, in the fabric of daily behavior. To understand the Ordnung, you must first understand the theology beneath it. The Amish descend from the 16th century Anabaptist movement, a radical branch of the Protestant Reformation that held 3 convictions so dangerous they got people killed. First, faith must be chosen, not inherited. Second, the church must remain separate from the state. Third, Christians must live visibly different from the world. For the Amish, that difference is not symbolic, it is structural. Every element of the Ordnung is designed to build and maintain a boundary between the community and the surrounding culture. Not because the world is feared in some superstitious sense, but because the Amish believe, based on 5 centuries of experience, including generations of persecution and martyrdom, that assimilation erodes faith, that convenience dissolves discipline, and that if you do not actively maintain the fence disappears. The Amish themselves use this metaphor. The Ordnung, they say, is like a fence around a schoolyard. Staying within it provides freedom. Crossing it invites danger. When asked why they reject a particular technology or practice, many Amish will give a simple answer that carries enormous weight. Because it is not Amish. That answer is not evasive. It is precise. The Ordnung does not evaluate innovation solely on their utility. It evaluates them on whether they are compatible with Amish identity. If a particular decision might disrupt religion, tradition, community, or family, the community is likely to prohibit it. The second purpose is equally deliberate. It is to create a visible boundary between the Amish and the English. The buggies, the plain dress, the beards, and the absence of electricity are not accidental remnants of a previous century. They are engineered separations, maintained on purpose, renewed every generation. Technology and the logic of limitation. Perhaps the most misunderstood dimension of the Ordnung concerns technology. Why no cars? Why limited electricity? Why horse-drawn transportation in a country that put a man on the moon? The answer is not that technology is evil. The answer is a question. Does this technology weaken the bonds that hold the community together? A car allows distance. Distance weakens accountability. Weak accountability weakens church authority. A horse and buggy can travel roughly 25 miles before the animal needs extended rest. That radius defines the size of a community. It keeps neighbors close, church districts walkable, relationships inescapable. So the Ordnung restricts personal car ownership. But the Amish do hire drivers and vans for visiting family, for weekly grocery trips, for commuting to workplaces off the farm. This is permitted in many districts because the Amish person does not own or control the vehicle. The dependency runs in one direction, toward the community, not away from it. Grid electricity connects households to the broader infrastructure of the modern world. It introduces convenience, media, entertainment, and eventually isolation. Each person in a separate room, absorbed in a separate screen. So in many districts, connection to the public electrical grid is prohibited. But batteries, diesel generators, and solar panels are sometimes permitted because they generate power locally, under the community's control, without tethering the household to an external system. The logic extends to specific and sometimes surprising details. In the 1960s, when government regulations required refrigerated milk storage tanks, Amish dairy farmers installed them, powered by diesel motors rather than grid electricity. Automatic floor cleaners in barns have been rejected in some communities because they give young farmhands too much free time. Disposable diapers and gas-powered weed cutters, on the other hand, have been accepted in many districts, classified as non-threatening innovations that do not disrupt the social order. Disabled members are allowed motorized wheelchairs. Medical equipment requiring electricity is permitted in the home. In recent years, many Amish have adopted electric bicycles, which are faster than walking or harnessing a horse but do not carry the same symbolic and practical risks as an automobile. The line is not drawn at modernity, it is drawn at disruption. The 4 Old Order communities of Allen County, Indiana, are among the most conservative in America. They use open buggies even during winter. Members wear black leather shoes year-round, even in summer heat. A progressive New Order community in Montana, on the other hand, permits electricity in the home and basic cell phones for work. These are both Amish communities. They are governed by different Ordnungs, each locally negotiated, each reflecting the specific convictions of its members. Clothing as theology. Amish clothing is often described as plain, but plainness is not fashion minimalism. It is theological discipline made visible. The Ordnung specifies fabric types, colors, fasteners, sleeve lengths, head coverings, hat styles, and beard expectations. In some communities, hooks and eyes replace buttons. In others, buttons are permitted, but zippers are not. Women wear calf-length dresses in muted, solid colors, never orange, pink, red, or yellow in some districts, with full aprons and prayer coverings. Men wear dark pants, solid-colored shirts, suspenders, and broad-brimmed hats. Married men grow beards. Mustaches are universally forbidden, not as an arbitrary tradition, but because mustaches were historically associated with the European military, and the Amish, as pacifists rooted in 5 centuries of nonviolent theology, refused the association. These rules serve 2 purposes that reinforce each other. First, they eliminate vanity. No brand logos, no status display, no trend cycles, no mechanism by which one family can signal wealth or taste through appearance. Second, they eliminate visible class difference. When everyone dresses similarly, identity shifts from self-expression to shared belonging. Clothing becomes a uniform of humility. There is a word the Amish use to describe the opposite of what their clothing represents. Hochmut, pride. The Ordnung is, in many of its dimensions, an anti-pride architecture. It is designed to prevent any individual from rising above the collective in appearance, in achievement, or in ambition. The governing virtue is not freedom. It is Gelassenheit, self-surrender, submission to God's will and to the community's authority. The clothing is the most visible expression of that surrender, worn every day, from childhood to death. We are halfway through this episode. If you are still here, you are the audience this channel was made for. Before we continue, subscribe if you have not already, and leave a comment telling us what aspect of the Ordnung you find most striking. The technology logic? The clothing theology? The fact that these rules are almost entirely unwritten? Your comments directly shape future episodes, and every interaction helps this channel reach more people looking for this kind of content. Share this video with someone who thinks carefully about how communities are built. Now, how the Ordnung is enforced, what happens when someone breaks it, and why this system continues to hold in a world designed to pull it apart. Enforcement without surveillance. The Ordnung is maintained by local leadership, a bishop, 2 or 3 ministers, and a deacon. These are not professionally trained clergy. They are farmers, carpenters, furniture makers, men chosen from within the community by a process that involves nomination and lot, understood as divine selection. They serve for life, without salary, while continuing their regular occupations. What makes the system unusual is not the authority of these leaders. It is the mechanism of enforcement. The Ordnung is not upheld through surveillance. There are no inspectors, no compliance officers, no written citations. It is upheld through conscience and community. If a member violates the Ordnung by purchasing forbidden technology, wearing prohibited clothing, or engaging in behavior inconsistent with the community's standards, the issue is first addressed quietly. A visit from an elder, a private conversation, an appeal to the member's commitment. If the behavior continues, more formal steps follow. Public acknowledgement before the congregation, a period of discipline, and in severe cases, when all other attempts at reconciliation have failed, excommunication. Meidung. The most controversial element of the Ordnung's enforcement is Meidung, social shunning. If a baptized member rejects the discipline of the church and refuses to repent, the community may impose social separation. Family members may limit shared meals. Business interactions may cease. The shunned person is not driven from the community physically, but they are excluded from the rituals and relationships that define membership. To outsiders, this appears harsh, and the experience of it can be painful, both for the person shunned and for the family members who must navigate the boundary between love and obedience. But within Amish theology, Meidung is not understood primarily as punishment. It is understood as restoration. The separation is intended to remind the person of what they have lost, and to create the conditions under which they might choose to return. And return is possible. In most communities, shunning can be reversed if the individual repents and seeks reconciliation. Even full excommunication, the ban, is not always permanent. The door is left open. The purpose is not to destroy the relationship, but to preserve the integrity of the community that makes all relationships possible. The modes of shunning vary considerably between communities. In some, the restrictions are rigorous. In others, families find ways to maintain contact while respecting the formal boundary. As with everything governed by the Ordnung, the practice is local, negotiated, and shaped by the specific character of each district. How the Ordnung changes. The Amish are often described as frozen in time. They are not. The Ordnung evolves, but slowly, cautiously, and collectively. Twice a year, before the spring and fall communion services, every Amish church district holds a council meeting called the Ordnungsgemeinde. This meeting is led by the bishop and attended by all baptized adult members, men and women alike. Women vote. The Ordnung is reviewed. Controversial issues are raised: the use of cell phones, the introduction of new farm equipment, changes to dress standards, and the question of what kind of lighting a buggy should carry. Discussion follows. And then comes the vote. The voting process is designed to make change difficult. If 2 or more members object to a proposed change, the Ordnung remains unaltered. Consensus is not a simple majority. It is near unanimity. This means that innovations must earn the trust of almost the entire community before they are accepted. It also means that once a rule is adopted, it is extremely difficult to rescind. Only after the Ordnung has been reviewed and affirmed, only after every member has expressed their willingness to abide by it, does the community proceed to communion. If harmony cannot be reached during the council service, communion may be postponed. The ritual of the Lord's Supper depends on the moral unity of the body. The Ordnung is the mechanism by which that unity is tested and renewed. This system produces the enormous variation that exists across Amish communities. Some districts permit construction equipment, limited business telephones, rubber tires on tractors, and airplane travel. Others prohibit indoor plumbing, linoleum flooring, and riding in motor vehicles under any circumstances. The spectrum is wide, but the process is consistent: local deliberation, collective consent, and a bias toward preservation over innovation. What happens when rules shape nearly every aspect of life? The Amish have an answer, and it is not the one most outsiders expect. The Amish have learned to live with limits, writes the Young Center for Anabaptist and Pietist Studies. Indeed, they would argue that setting and respecting limits on almost everything is one of the foundations of wisdom. Limits, for the Amish, are a requirement for happiness. Without limits, they believe, individuals become arrogant, conceited, and self-destructive. Modern life often burdens individuals with what psychologists call the paradox of choice, the anxiety that accompanies unlimited options. What to wear, what to eat, what career to pursue, what identity to perform, what to believe. The Amish remove many of those choices, not in the way a prison removes them through coercion, but in the way a monastic rule removes them, through voluntary submission to a structure understood as spiritually beneficial. Freedom in the Amish system is not self-definition. It is obedience within structure, and the results, by certain measures, are striking. The Amish population has grown by over 131% since 2000, doubling roughly every 20 years. 85 to 90% of Amish youth choose baptism and lifelong church membership. Amish businesses register a roughly 95% survival rate over 5 years, compared to approximately 50% for American businesses nationally. Divorce is functionally non-existent. Crime rates are negligible. Family structures remain intact across generations. These are not the statistics of a community in decline. They are the statistics of a community that has found a way to reproduce itself, culturally, economically, and demographically, in a world that is failing to do so by nearly every comparable measure. The trade-off is real. Personal ambition must yield to communal expectation. Individual preference must yield to collective agreement. The range of permissible self-expression is narrow. The Ordnung simplifies life, but it also constrains it. Whether that constraint is experienced as loss or liberation depends entirely on the perspective of the person living within it or observing it from outside. The Ordnung provides cohesion, but it demands conformity, and for some, the cost is too high. This is why youth are given Rumspringa, a period typically between the ages of 16 and 22, when they have somewhat greater freedom before the binding commitment of baptism. During Rumspringa, young people have not yet taken baptismal vows. They are not yet formally subject to the Ordnung. They may socialize with more independence. Some experiment with English life, driving cars, wearing mainstream clothing, or attending parties. Most do not. For the vast majority, Rumspringa is a quiet period of courtship and discernment, not the sensationalized rebellion depicted by outside media. But the choice is real. Once baptized, the Ordnung becomes binding. Every member affirms it twice a year before communion. Departure after baptism carries consequences, not merely social awkwardness, but formal shunning and the potential loss of daily contact with family and lifelong community. The weight of that consequence is one reason the retention rate is so high, but it is also one reason the decision to leave, for those who make it, is so wrenching. Several dozen outsiders have joined the Amish over the years. A few have become well-respected members of their communities. But the barriers are immense: learning Pennsylvania Dutch, accepting the Ordnung in its entirety, and surrendering not just conveniences, but an entire framework for understanding the self. The Amish do not actively evangelize. The community grows from within, through large families and high retention, not through recruitment. The Ordnung is invisible to outsiders. There is no printed copy to download, no official public archive, no website to consult. And yet it governs work, worship, courtship, technology, clothing, speech, discipline, and death. It transforms belief into daily practice. It converts theology into architecture, the architecture of a life organized around the conviction that the individual, left to his own devices in a world of unlimited options, will destroy himself. In a culture defined by personal freedom, the Amish have chosen collective restraint, not because they fear modernity, but because they fear losing each other. The Ordnung is the instrument of that choice, local, oral, living, and remarkably durable. It has held for centuries. It is holding now. And in a world where institutions fragment and identities shift with every news cycle, the Ordnung provides something that almost nothing else in modern life can offer: continuity. Not perfection, not universal appeal, but continuity. This has been Alternate Journals. We document worlds governed by different assumptions, where faith, discipline, and community define daily existence. Not for spectacle, for understanding. If this episode changed how you think about rules, freedom, or community, do 3 things right now. Subscribe to this channel. Share this video with one person who would find it valuable. And leave a comment. What would you be willing to give up for the kind of stability the Ordnung provides? Those 3 actions are free, they take 10 seconds, and they are what allow this channel to keep producing episodes like this one. Thank you for watching.